First of all, let's compare and contrast marijuana with the other, even more widely smoked substance in our society, tobacco. The tobacco was used more widely than any other smoked substance, and marijuana is second only to tobacco.
Lucy?
Yes, dear?
Give me a cigarette, will you, hon?
Don't say cigarettes, say Philip Morris.
Oh? Is there any other kind?
Not for you, there isn't. Nothing but the best for Mr. Ricardo.
Thank you. Lucy, you're so good to me.
You see how easy it is to keep a man happy? Why not give your husband a carton of Philip Morris cigarettes?
Smart move. He'll love them for their mildness, their smoothness, and their wonderful good taste. And he'll love you, too, for thinking of him.
That's right. Good night, everybody. And don't forget, call for Philip Morris. Call for Philip.
We know that if you analyze the contents of tobacco and marijuana, they're quite similar. The major difference is that tobacco contains nicotine, not found in marijuana, and marijuana contains THC and about 60 other THC-like substances called cannabinoids, not found in tobacco. But there are a lot of other particulates that are shared in common, and these include carcinogens, such as benzpyrene, the most potent of the carcinogens and considered to be responsible for a large percentage of human cancers. Benzpyrene is found in 50% higher concentration in marijuana smoke than in the smoke from a comparable quantity of tobacco. And this has been shown by 3 separate groups of chemical investigators. So the expectation is that if you smoke marijuana enough and on a regular basis, that you would incur similar risks to smoking tobacco. So what are the major health risks for tobacco? Emphysema, which I prefer to call chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, it's the new term, consists of chronic bronchitis and emphysema. But you could have significant impairment in lung function without emphysema. It could just be due to airways disease, what we call small airways disease. But because we can't separate out the two components of COPD, emphysema, and the airways component, we lump them together. So that's COPD. So now COPD is the 4th leading cause of death in the US and in the world, and will become the 3rd leading cause in 2020. So it's a very important disease. About 120,000 Americans die each year from COPD. Probably the best evidence for separating out, the best method for separating out a COPD patient from someone else is to look at the rate of decline in lung function. I shouldn't say the best, it's probably the most informative. But it's more difficult to do because you have to make measurements every year for a number of years. And so you get a slope of the rate of loss of lung function over time. We did that. We actually measured lung function every year in our marijuana smokers up to 8 years. And we found that the slope of the decline in lung function was almost identical in the marijuana-only smokers compared to the non-smokers, where it was accelerated in the tobacco smokers. So just one other piece of evidence that marijuana is not a risk factor for the development of COPD. I think I'm convinced of that. And the other major health consequence, pulmonary health consequence of tobacco, is lung cancer. Cancer is the 2nd most common cause of death in the US, and lung cancer is the most common form of cancer. And the major risk factor for lung cancer is tobacco smoking. About 160,000 Americans die each year of lung cancer. So the question that came to my mind and that of my colleagues was whether or not there was any evidence that marijuana would at least qualitatively share some of these health risks with those of tobacco. And that was the rationale for initiating our studies back in the 1980s. What is the evidence that marijuana smoking, habitual marijuana smoking, can lead to lung cancer? With respect to the development of lung cancer, we found no evidence of any increased risk of lung cancer occurrence in association with marijuana smoking alone. the marijuana smokers, if anything, had a reduced risk for developing lung cancer. Not a significantly reduced risk, but reduced less than one-fold. So that means reduced. Whereas the tobacco smokers had a markedly increased risk. If those who smoke more than 2 packs a day had a 20-fold increase in the risk. That's 2,000%. Those who smoke from 1 to 2 packs a day had an 8-fold risk. It's 800%. So that contrasts with no risk, no increased risk, or a slightly reduced risk with the marijuana smokers. THC actually has an anti-tumoral effect. And these are studies that were done both in experimental animals and in cell culture systems, and for different kinds of cancer. For lung cancer, breast cancer, thyroid cancer, prostate cancer, gliomas, brain cancer, that the development and growth, or the growth actually of the tumor is suppressed by THC, and metastases are also suppressed. So how can that be? Well, THC impairs protein synthesis, and it's what we call anti-mitogenic or anti-proliferative. You need, so tumor cells don't as readily proliferate.
And so such information there, we're thankful for that information that came from Stephen Kavanga. And for those who would like to revisit that, you could check that on the internet, Marijuana and the Lungs. As I said, from Stephen Kavanga specifically. And the doctor there, speaking of first of all, he went into COPD, which is really the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, that would be. And, you know, it's a sort of disease that would obstruct the whole breathing aspect, and, you know, the airflow within the lungs will become very poor. Obviously, shortness of breath and coughing and what they call it, mucus and all of these different things. So it's a real chronic condition. And he was saying that in his studies, when you study individuals that would smoke marijuana alone and compare them to those who wouldn't smoke at all, and then compare them to those who smoke cigarette or tobacco, because to be very honest, in my book, I do not really, I'm not quick to try to compare marijuana to tobacco at all. I don't see the comparison. I have no interest in putting them together. It's not an argument for me at all. You know what I mean? We're talking about the tree of life. We're talking about the tree of life. But anyway, since this is the study that has been done here, he's obviously showing that you find a higher case of COPD in those that obviously would smoke tobacco, and not only a lesser case in those who don't, but those who would smoke marijuana and those who smoke nothing at all. According to the good doctor here, you would actually see basically the same results. So really, why we brought that forward even at the beginning of the program, obviously, is to, you know, bring a certain level of medical, please pardon me, a level of medical facts towards the table, so that we could understand how serious this subject area is as it relates to the tree of life. But really, I would really want to go into it on another level, on a spiritual level, an esoteric level, yes. But obviously, again, the medical level, the physical level is very important, because it's a physical plant that has some very spiritual potential. And that is the dynamics that we want to get in. Those are the dynamics that we want to get into this evening. Now, one thing with the tree of life, and I will refer to the cannabis sativa as the tree of life, sattva, even in the Sanskrit, sattva is really a term that stands for the spirit, the sattva, the sativa. And there are many sativa plants, but plants in general are spiritual. The plants are spiritual. The plants have their own energy. The plants can communicate with you. It's maybe you are the one that is not communicating with the plants. So this plant, the marijuana, is a very outstanding plant. Within the Bible, it speaks about this plant of renown. And this plant of renown, the leaves of this plant is said to be for the healing of the nation. And it bore 12 manner of fruits. And interestingly, when you really observe this plant that we call the cannabis plant, not just the hemp now, the cannabis, the ganja, we notice that industrially it has so much to offer. There is even a product that they are delving into right now around here known as hempcrete. You see them put that together, you marvel, where they take the stalk and they grind the stalk up and they mix it with water and somewhat of something like what we call white lime. I don't know what you would call it, but it's another term, that the type of substance it is. But anyway, and you mix that together, you have a substance stronger than concrete, you know. And we all know that the canvas for the ships that sailed over here, even during slavery, were made from cannabis. That's where the term canvas comes from, cannabis. You know, we understand that even the ropes on the ship were cannabis again. In general, before time, that's our terminology, before time, hemp and cannabis was widely used for clothes, for shoes, you know, in all sort of creation as it relates to material, you know, again, for the sale of the ships and ropes and these different things. The cannabis would do that. Even up to today, many individuals have taken the opportunity now, as you could see that we are living in a time when we are now leaning on the medical marijuana, and we want to even disrespect the THC, talking about we don't want the marijuana with the THC. You understand? So now we're picking and choosing. I want to remind you that a few decades ago, the marijuana was Satan's plant. The marijuana was the devil's weed. You better believe that. There was nothing at all good about it. And the same people that were saying that about the plant, now all of a sudden, they like the plant. It has so much potential. It can do this and do that. And they're the same ones that are trying to tell you, but this part of it is not good. Oh, but you can use it, but don't use it this way. Since when you are an authority, even if you're a doctor, it doesn't make any difference, because as a doctor, you were saying that it was the devil's plant. So where is the true authority here? To me, you should check the Rastaman that has been blazing the herb for how long and still around. So the doctor himself showed you that there's no real proof, and we know that. Hear what the doctor said, man, that the THC has cancer-fighting elements within it. So it fights, and he looked up when he said it, lung cancer. It fights lung cancer. It fights lung cancer. Come on. Breast cancer and other cancers, tumors, all of these different things. And yes, obviously, when you use it in different ways, you know, it could be more effective in the oil fashion, when you ingest it, depending on the level that you ingest it on. But I mean, if you're fighting lung cancer, I don't see no better way to use it but when you're huffing and puffing. You understand? Yeah, that is why those who suffer from that, you see them using the vaporizer nowadays. That's the steam chalice. But we just don't want to, you know, accept the culture. So we burning fire on the chalice now, the steam chalice. But yet still we're telling you, go to Dr. Frank and get a vaporizer. Why? Because it has a little electronic apparatus on it and a big plastic bag and it was made by Babylon? Nah, man. The steam chalice is totally all natural and it does the same thing. It's vapors. You know, you're getting the real juice from the herb. If you burn the steam pipe, you would notice that the herb itself doesn't even go away because you've sucked out the elements thereof. So stop dissing us, man. You just want to make some excuse to diss us. We are the original, the Rasta man, and we come with the ancient concept, how to eat, how to drink, music. We were the ones for years showing the world, no, do not brutalize this plant. This plant will save you one day. And look what happened now. And everybody wanted to run with it too, eh? Presidents talking about, well, we're looking to start the, marijuana industry around here. Yeah. And what about the Rasta man, the who? Oh, these fellows here, well, we'll give them a little plot of land. They can grow a couple of trees for themselves. We highlight from time to time the character known as Asa, which is Osiris. And Osiris is seen more time green